Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hero Movie Podcast, your greatest source for superhero movie discussion in the multiverse. I am your host, Adam Porters, and I'm joined by Sweet Sean Kovacs from the internet.
If you know someone of a certain age, Turtle power is going to make them go crazy.
You got that right. And of course, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and I think this is our first Corey Feldman movie.
Oh my gosh, I think you're right.
Yeah, it is.
No other connection
Hopefully
to
not
that.
the last.
Well,
No, fingers crossed.
when that License to Drive comic that you've been working on comes out finally, I think we'll have the Corey Feldman episode that we all not only need but would deserve.
Bruce, do you know the story of Corey Feldman on this movie?
No, I don't.
Paid $1,500 for his work on this show.
I thought he would have paid more than that to get that chance.
You.
He'll do anything, and we'll do anything for the people that support this show over at patreon.com/HMP. There you get the pre-show, post-show, and of course, Dinger Zone. But the biggest and bestest thing is that once every month, you fine people get to vote on a movie that we watch. And actually, you get to do that twice this month. But let's roll over our options here that everybody had to choose from. We had Bulletproof Monk, Hancock, Zoom, Return of Swamp Thing, and just, I don't want to say bashing the others because it was not that close, but close enough, man. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 1990 just rose to the top there, and frankly, I couldn't be happier with that decision.
Oh, me too. This is the one I wanted to win, but I was afraid to jinx it when the vote went up.
Oh yeah,
Me too.
You don't say that right out loud to the HMPers, man, because they'll just go like, "Oh, is that what you want? Well, let's not do that at all." It becomes a write-in campaign, and it's just some sort of animated crap that'll just drive Sean up the bumble of the wall.
And also not to mention, like, not just our voters, but in general, I think the universe hates me. So if I say what I want out loud, that's a good way not to get it.
Yeah, I concur with that. Just keep it all quiet and to yourself. If nothing happens, it's fine. But we are excited about all of that, and we're excited to welcome in a couple of people into the HMP Nickname Hall of Fame here, everybody. Sean has a couple for us because we finally put up a list, a big giant list of all the HMPers that support us over at Patreon and all their corresponding nicknames. We've got kind of the knock list now.
Oh man, that MI series never ends.
No, it doesn't.
The knock list is in the open.
We get one, and we can match it up with their code name and everything. It's perfect. So Sean has a couple more names for us because we had a few people that, for whatever reason, that we ended up missing. So let's get into some of those.
Right. So we've got 5 new names here on the list. And the first one up here is Amber Justice. Now, Amber Justice, you don't need a nickname. Your name is Amber Justice.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
That sounds like a superhero, man.
Right. Well, but it's also sort of a ripoff if I don't give her any nickname at all, with the name Amber Justice. So Amber Justice, let's just make it clean. Your nickname is the Amber Justice League.
Oh, that's beautiful.
There you
Super
go.
Clean, perfect, very good nickname, Amber.
I'm picturing all dinosaurs whose DNA was gotten from Amber.
Oh,
Dino DNA.
But in a strange twist, not the element Amber, the actual person who's got the nickname.
what was that crappy song from the early 2000s? That Amber is the color of your energy or some garbage like that.
Oh my word!
Woo! You talk about bad.
Ugh, fake hippies everywhere.
Just disgusting.
So next up is Jessica Berry. Jessica never got a nickname either. And Jessica, I had a difficult time coming up with a nickname for you, to be honest with you. But I think that we've settled on something great because your nickname, Jessica, is Night Cheese.
Working on the night cheese. You remember that Bob Seger song?
That's exactly why I've nicknamed her that, because no one in our pantheon has a song that goes with their name. But now we've got Working on the Night Cheese. It's
Perfect. It's so good.
Oh, man.
And so next up is Corey, and I don't know how you pronounce it, if it's the French pronunciation or the American pronunciation. It's either Corey Dernier or Corey Dernier, and I don't know which one it is. So let's just say, because we live in America, it's Dernier for now, but you can correct us, Corey. Corey, your new nickname is the 21st Century Giant.
Ooh.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Not stuck in the old times, but this is new stuff.
Brand new giant. He's a new giant.
I'm new to the giant scene.
And then we've got John Clifford. John Clifford, your nickname is now AstroTurf.
All right. AstroTurf, beautiful.
That sounds like a guy that's eventually going to be the villain.
It could be.
Kills all the grass on Earth and replaces it with AstroTurf.
No more. Well, what he wants to do is rid the world of having to mow a lawn. So, like, it's kind of like Magneto. It's like, it sounds pretty good when you think about it, but if you really get it down, you're killing all plant life. That's no good.
And he's like facing it from both sides. He's enemies with grass plus that new field turf stuff they've been using for the last 10 years or so.
Yeah. And finally is Jens. And Adam gave me the heads up on you, Jens. And so I know that you, one, are male and two, are German. And so I'm guessing that you pronounce your last name Vindend. I'm guessing.
Vinland?
Vindend. But please correct me if I'm butchering your last name. I don't mean to. But Jens, your new nickname, your HMP nickname is the German Whisper.
Ooh. Just subtly in your ear there. Hello, I am the German Whisper.
Jens, the German Whisper.
Yeah, Jens is coming in at the 5, whatever that little, it might be a pound. I don't know little crazy symbols. We're here in America.
The
Euro, probably.
Yeah, it's
probably
probably
a euro.
It's probably worth more than the regular 5.
the Deutschmark?
I don't think they use Deutschmarks anymore. I think it's euros.
I think
it's just straight euro.
But see, that's the best part about being American is we don't even really have to know. We don't know. We don't care. We just kind of go, well, thank you. We go, thank you. And we thank you to everyone who supports the show, patreon.com/HMP. If you are already a supporter and haven't got your nickname, throw it up on the, just kind of scroll through all the Patreon links there. You'll see a link to the spreadsheet. Fill in your stuff. Tell us that you need a name, and we'll fill in all the new nicknames as this show goes up. So thank you to all of those people. And the best part is you're going to be able to vote again at the end of this month, because we got 5 weeks in this month, boys. So we're going to be chock-a-block busy over here at the old HMP. So let's get into it. As we've said, they chose Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 1990. Here is the trailer.
Our family grows. The city itself will be our playground to use as we please, rewarding ourselves and punishing our enemies.
We've been looking for you, Miss O'Neill.
There is a new enemy, freaks of nature. Together, we will punish these creatures.
What the heck was that?
Looked like sort of a big turtle in a trench coat.
Awesome!
Excellent!
Yeah! I love being a turtle!
All right, that was the trailer for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 1990. Here's the IMDb plotline for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles emerge from the shadows to protect New York City from a gang of criminal ninjas. This is directed by Steve Barron. You know what time it is.
Bruce's Comic Book Connection.
Bruce, what do we got this week?
Well, about 3 years ago, I got to sit down and talk to Kevin Eastman for an hour or so in an intimate setting. It was a VIP panel. That meant people had to buy a separate ticket to attend. And one reason I agreed to host it was because it meant I didn't have to pay 35 Canadian dollars to be there. I'll honestly say if you're a big fan of a creator and they're going to talk, you don't really want to be the host or moderator or whatever you call it, because you want to sit back and just watch and listen. You don't want to feel the weight of the responsibility of making sure both the audience and the star have a good experience. This means the one person in the room whose experience means absolutely squat is you. But Eastman was wonderful. I had thorough enjoyment of the experience. He's a super nice guy. He has lots of great stories, and something that is very rare in a comic creator, he seemed to have zero bitterness about anything. And if you know the whole story about where most of the Turtles' money went, you know he has something like 54 million reasons to be bitter. And he's not. Look, I'd be bitter. But clearly Kevin Eastman is a better man than I am. So I really enjoyed sitting at the dais with him and just talking about the Turtles. It was like one of those moments in an inspirational show or movie where the whole audience disappeared and it was just me and him. Do you want to know why it felt that way? It wasn't because I was awesome at my job. It was because Kevin Eastman has ridiculous charisma. He seems like one of those guys that didn't just happen to have the right idea at the right time and be in the right place. He seemed like a guy who was going to be special no matter the circumstances. And that really bums me out because I'd like to think I'm just as good as anybody else. I was just born too late or too early or didn't live in the right place or didn't know the right people. But Kevin Eastman blows all that right up in front of my face because that guy, he's got something special going on, and that's pretty cool. He also acted like I was a great guy, even though he had no way to know that I'm not. And as a moderator, I'm like many things I do in life. I'm competent and professional, but nothing special beyond that. But he spoke with me at length about Daredevil and Frank Miller and how he was parodying that work, but at the same time, absolutely loved it. It was kind of an honest presentation of admiration and envy combined into one, and making a comic as a lark, playing it all off as a goof or a labor of love while really wanting major success with it, but afraid that admitting as much would set him up for disappointment. He also talked about, and I'm paraphrasing here, but being able to let out a big sigh of relief when it did become successful so he didn't have to worry about it anymore or pretend like it wasn't a big deal. I related to that guy. Like I felt he was just one of my neighbors or something, and he had lived a life similar to my creative life, save for that whole sigh of relief when he eventually attained creative success thing. But let's be clear. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was sincere from day one. What you see is what you get. There was not careful observation or market research. This wasn't a manufactured situation like one can sometimes run into. You know, there are stories of major tech companies starting out in a garage or a basement, but when you look harder, these were people that had at least $1 million in seed money, and that's like late 70s, early 80s dollars. It's still impressive what they did, but it's not the story that gets put out there. But the Ninja Turtles, you know, with the Ninja Turtles, Eastman and Laird really were just two broke guys who drew and wrote these comics together. And when I say together, I mean it. They still don't know, you know, precisely who drew what and who wrote what. They were working out of an apartment and borrowed something like $500 from an uncle or something to print 1,000 copies of issue 1, somewhere in that ballpark. And that was going to be the only issue because they didn't have any money to print an issue 2. And they went from shop to shop selling them on consignment. As someone who's kind of been in that position, that's a hard thing to do. They had no platform. They had no resume. It was just two dirty looking guys trying to sell a homemade comic. And the fact they succeeded is why I keep trying, because within a few years, that crazy comic became the highest grossing independent movie, a record that stood for 9 years. So here's to you, Eastman and Laird.
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy heck of a run for these guys, and like from the time that things started to where they just blew up, and we get to like I'm calling 1990. It's about peak Turtle in my opinion. Now, granted, it surprisingly has gone on to this day. There's still Ninja Turtle stuff out there. Kids are still discovering Ninja Turtles for the first time, and for them, it's still just as fresh and unique.
It's like Viacom doesn't want to let a license they paid a lot of money for go out of.
Why would you? Hey, if the kids will just shake their heads and go, "I like this," and we'll buy all the crap. Why on earth not?
Well, it's also one of those weird properties where it works for every ethnicity and every sex. Like, you know, like I can remember girls loving Turtles as much as the boys did. I can remember it didn't matter if you're a black or white or Asian, like you liked the Turtles at some point.
And they also kind of have a real good sense, and this I'm going to put on Viacom, but they have a real good sense of how often to refresh it, because it's not like Pokemon where the original cartoon has just been running for 20 some years. I mean, They kind of knew, like, for every, I don't know, what do you think it is? About every 5 years, they get a new cartoon out there. Some new comics are always rolling around to capture whatever is going to relate a little bit more to the youngest folks out there.
Yeah.
Because that original cartoon is one that Gen Xers remember fondly, younger Gen Xers remember fondly. But it's not like one of those where my kids wanted to go back and watch the old cartoons like they might with some other stuff. They were watching whatever was on Nickelodeon at the time.
Yeah.
And there,
I'm sorry, go ahead, Adam.
no, I was going to say there was one episode because Ninja Turtles, the animated series, the first one, was very much like that. Oh boy, do I remember this better than it was. I rewatched one episode where the entire conceit of the episode, or maybe we talked about this episode, I forget, where Casey Jones is like stalking out a vending machine. And trying to find out who's stealing from the vending machine at night at the basketball court. It's really like you're watching, you going, why is he wasting time on this? There are people that are getting robbed and mugged and all kinds of stuff's going on.
But I do love low stakes, like especially in this era where everything is the end of the world and blue light to the sky. Like having something where it's that low stakes is wonderful.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was 1990. I think.
Yeah, let's get some context.
I was like 8 years old when this thing came out. And I was all about the Ninja Turtles. The animated series had been on the air for a couple years at that point. We had tons of toys and stuff. And I remember specifically, this is the first time. So Conspiracy Adam has started way, way, way back when. Because I remember sitting at the on the playground at daycare talking about Ninja Turtles and what would make a really cool Ninja Turtle toy. And we're like, man, what if these things could talk? Wouldn't that be amazing? And I swear to you, like less than 3 months later, there was a Ninja Turtle toy that had like a little shell on the back, where a little speaker thing where you just put a zip tie through, pull it, and they said like 3 or 4 different things. So Ninja Turtles were my world, and I knew, and it felt like, you know, the world was trying to give me exactly what I wanted. And then this poster came out for this movie where you see the 4 heads coming out of the sewer and everything, and it was just, it blew me away. You could not imagine someone being more excited for a movie than the Ninja Turtles in live action. And of course, my brother's like, you know, a year and a half younger than me, so, you know, he's completely on board as well.
Oh, that's so wonderful, Adam.
How about your relationship with this movie, Sean?
Well, so here is the thing, is that when you are a nerdy nerd growing up in New England, you have 2 things over nerds from every other part of the country. One is the Tick, because the Tick starts at New England Press, and then the other one is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because it starts at Mirage Studios, which is a really, which is like, it sounds like it's this really great thing. It's 2 dudes in an apartment.
Yeah.
But we got Turtles earlier than the rest of the country, and we got the Tick earlier than the rest of the country. And so
you guys are the only place that got first print issues.
Yes, and I can remember, and I do have several of the first prints. I don't have the first one because, I mean, that's, you know, there's like 1,000 of them.
You'd be sitting back smoking very expensive Turtle Finance cigars or something.
But I do have first run stuff from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because, you know, as bizarre as this sounds, when you are a 16-year-old, I was younger than that when the comic came out. I was probably like, I want to say I was probably like 12 or 13 when the comic first came out, or when I was first aware of the comic, I should say. And so, you know, you go to your comic book store and there it is. And it looks different than every other comic book there is. And there's a weird thing when you are somebody like the 3 of us are, where when you see something that looks like you yourself could make it, you are instantly drawn to it far more than you are something that's glossy and lovely.
Yeah.
And so when I first saw, it was issue number 7 of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and it's still Eastman and Laird, and it's still like this little tiny thing. And Cerebus has a tie-in with them, which like I kind of sort of knew who Cerebus was at the time. And it seemed like something that me and my friends could make. And so I grabbed it, I bought it, and you know, it's one of those things where to this day I could tell you what every single panel looks like, how it looks like they did it, like all of those things. Because when you are like a nerdy creative kid and you see something that looks like you and your friends made, you like that far more than, issue 592 of Superman. I mean, it's just the way that my head worked. So to then smash cut to, because I didn't keep up with, and nor do I think you even could at the time, like the news of like, oh, there's going to be a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon. It just got bought by blah, 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 or whatever. There was a commercial one day on TV, and it blew my mind that this little tiny thing from our little part of the world had its own cartoon. And then from there, everything explodes after that, because even though that cartoon now is dated and hokey and kind of weird looking, actually, it hit a nerve at the time. And it was one of those things where like every kid knew every turtle's name, to the point where last year I'm hanging out with a couple of people, and a lady finds out that I'm a nerdy nerd. And the first thing she asks me is, which Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle are you? And that is ridiculous that someone who could not possibly be a nerd knows who her favorite Ninja Turtle is, but they do. She does. She has her favorite. And so just there's nothing like it now, where they are literally everywhere. Like at one point it felt like that was Star Wars, where Star Wars was everywhere. That is cute compared to all of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff at the time. It was everything. It was everywhere. And so at a certain point, when they get huge and now they have a movie coming out, it felt like this is my thing, and it just caught on, and it made it so much more special to me. And that's my relationship with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle.
Very good stuff, man.
Now,
so hold on, because now it's Bruce.
Oh,
now we got to go to Bruce.
Yeah. Well, I discovered the comics like retroactively. Mm-hmm. I mean, my introduction was, I feel like it was in the summertime, and the local Fox affiliate just happened to be on TV. And this cartoon was on that I'd never heard of before, which, now you really get surprised if there's something you never heard of before, because it seems like everything's recycled. But even then it was like, I didn't know anybody was really doing anything new. And then just kind of watched enough to see that the name alone seems so weird. And now Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is like a household name. It's something that seems very commonplace, but that combination of things seems so ridiculous. Really is the only word I can think for, particularly if you weren't primed from the comics. Seems so ridiculous. Like, I wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt. I was too old to really be watching a new cartoon, probably. Yeah. And at least in my mind, I was too old. But just the sheer ridiculousness of it. And I was going through like a phase where I was trying to watch a lot of like Bruce Lee movies, Jean-Claude Van Damme movies. I was into the Kung Fu movies, and this was like, okay, now this is like a type of Kung Fu thing that's like, it's just for me. I'm going to like this bizarre, obscure thing that nobody else is ever going to know about. Right.
Yeah.
But when the movie came out, I mean, my nearest movie theater was a 45-minute drive, and I don't know if I had my license and that was like one of the first movies that I drove myself, or if my mom took me. But I know a couple of my friends who also liked the Turtles and Kung Fu movies together saw it, and we were pleased thoroughly. We were not dissatisfied in any way when we saw this movie in the theater. And, we revisited it in conversations for a very long time.
And you guys tell me, because I'm a little on the younger side, but I feel like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles took an already beloved food of pizza and really drove it to the next level. I don't know that pizza is nearly as popular today as it is without these. Maybe it would be, but I think the Ninja Turtles pushed the level of pizza enjoyment in America specifically just through the roof. I could be wrong, but that's the vibe I always got.
They did something else that I would have thought was impossible at the time. They took cowabunga away from Bart Simpson. Like he had to just quit using it.
Yeah, it's true. To answer your pizza question, Adam, that's more the cartoon than the comic book. Like they ate pizza in the comic book for sure, but it was more of like this is the only thing we can really get.
Yeah.
In the cartoon, they just amped it up to 11, as well as the personalities of the turtles. That's all from the cartoon, not the comic book. I think that it probably didn't hurt that the most popular thing in the world were turtles and they love pizza. That's probably not gonna hurt anything. But I don't remember pizza having a hard time selling.
No. I'm not saying that pizza had a rough road before the turtles. I'm just saying like it turned it to 11.
I think that the turtles adopted pizza because of its extreme popularity with teenagers rather than the other way around.
Sure. And I will say this too. Like Bruce, I was a little too old. This is, man, I'm afraid I'm gonna like go deep here, which I don't mean to. The Turtles is the last piece of my Arrested Development, because I'm somebody who, it took me a long time to become an adult and to become a teenager and all of that stuff. It took me a long time. And part of that reason is probably the Turtles, to be quite honest with you, because even though I was no longer, just like hip deep in Star Wars and stuff like that. And, we've talked about it before. You had to hide to be a nerd when we were younger. And so to love the Turtles, to go to a Turtles movie was something that you were getting, it was risky for me. Like I grew up in a town with 3 different movie theaters, so it wasn't that big a problem, but they were all sold out. Every single theater was sold out for the first month of the Turtles. Everybody went all the time to go see this movie. And because it was an independent movie, it wasn't playing everywhere all the time. Like you can see the Avengers whenever. You don't need like advanced tickets or anything like that. You needed them for the Turtles movies. And so the Turtles is really the last thing where I had to pretend that it wasn't a big deal for me, but it was huge. It was a massive, massive deal. I didn't watch the cartoon every day because at that point I had a job and, like all that other stuff and extracurricular activities. But I did love the Turtles. And I especially loved that not only were they getting a movie, but they were getting a movie that looked like it was for a teenager, not a child. And, now it looks quaint and cute, but at the time, it has a bit of Batman 89 envy, and there's a bit of that, and, it's dark and there's all of that stuff. So it's more for like someone around my age at that time than it is for a small child. And that contributed to, I'm right about this. This is for me, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
This movie was like The Dark Knight for me, in that it was, we just seen the cartoon so much. I didn't have any real relationship with the comics. I knew what they looked like on account of like Wizard Magazine and stuff, where you could, see pictures every now and then, but never really, read any of those things. But man, when this thing came on and it's so dark for a kids movie in 1990. And the fact that even the Turtles, like when Raphael goes, damn, you're like, as an 8-year-old, it's like, whoa, boy, we are into some dark territory here. And everything is grimy and gritty and stuff. It is as a little kid, it felt so dangerous.
Yes. And two of the things that make this feel more adult than it actually is one, the way it's lit, because it's lit like Batman. It's not lit like it's a comedy. And a lot of comic book movies at the time were still lit really bright. Like Marvel kind of flipped that on its head, but previous to Marvel, if you wanted to be serious about your comic book movie, you had to have it darkly lit. And this is definitely one of those movies. The other part to it is that you have the production design in this movie. It's kind of its own thing. It's not trying to be as Batman as I remember it trying to be. it's kind of its own New York, for lack of a better term for it, because it's shot in Wilmington, North Carolina. I think some of it was shot in Canada, probably.
Yeah, a little bit for a couple of scenery things for New York.
Exterior in New York. There's no way around that.
But most of it in Wilmington, yeah.
Yeah, and so it looks nothing like the Gothic design of a Batman set, Tim Burton Batman set, and so it has a seriousness to it, even if the turtles themselves are being goofy, which I think adds to being a child being taken seriously, where, oh, they're not just making it the dumbest thing in the world, because they start doing that later with the second and third movies. But for this first movie, it's something special, and it's a fastball for kids. And that's what I'm hearing from you, Adam, because, Bruce and I, I was dating by that point, and hiding my nerdy shame, but
I wasn't dating, but not for lack of trying.
So when this comes out, it just feels like it's more of the same ethos of a Batman 89, where oh, good, they're starting to take this more serious. And the reason why I keep referring back to Batman 89 is that we were starved. We had nothing. For years and years, we had nothing. And it's because because everything got killed by Superman 3 and Superman 4. So they're like, we're not making superhero movies anymore. And then they finally come out with the new Batman, and then bang, right on the heels of that is this. And then for 10 years, we get nothing but garbage. But those two movies are pretty special in my head, even though I have now recently rewatched Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and know that it is not a super special movie.
One thing I really enjoy about the movie, though, and I didn't appreciate it when this movie came out, because like I said, I became aware of the comics retroactively. Now I've got a nice hardcover of all the original Eastman and Laird stories, so I've read them all. But when this movie was made, Eastman and Laird did not have any rights to anything that was introduced solely for the cartoon. Mm-hmm. So this has this interesting balance where it's shockingly true to the comics for something that still comes across as mostly lighthearted. This is heavily influenced by the comics, some lines direct from the comics. And then what they can do to give it the tone and the flavor of the show without directly using anything from the show also shines through. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, they did get the rights to use the mask colors that were used in the show, because that would have been tough. Yep. Instead of having everybody in red like the original comics. But it's a really interesting balance watching it now and seeing, okay, so they've sort of balanced both the show and the comic to make this movie. And I think that worked really well at the time. And it also helps it didn't have any kind of competition. And it really feels like an independent movie that is trying as hard as it can to feel like a studio production.
And I think that it achieves that. I mean, it does feel like a movie of the time.
And I think I didn't realize it was independent until, I don't know, 10, 15 years later, when you kind of read about it as the most successful independent film before Blair Witch. And the time I saw it, I just assumed because it had a distributor that it was a studio film. I mean, I didn't really understand the industry then, but I still kind of knew there's a difference between something like The Crying Game and, something that is a summer blockbuster.
They're on the same shelf together. It's fine.
Yeah.
I thought it was, I love that going back, that kind of we keep that sort of spirit that we had with the cartoon and everything, but it did make it feel like that was real life. And we treated all of these things like they were real. There's no point in this movie, I don't think. I mean, there are jokes that are made, but there's no one winking at the camera going hey, how about that? Wasn't that something right there?
Well, it's right on the line.
It's as close as you can get.
Yeah. And the big, were you guys surprised by anything in this movie? Rewatching it now?
Rewatching it, yeah, I was surprised that it has more of a lull than I remembered. I kind of remembered him pushing it pretty solid the whole time. But no, other than that, I think I've seen it too many times too recently, I guess.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this is one where I know everything about it. It is one of those where I can just everything I go, oh, I remember this exactly. Here's the next point. There's your next line. Here's the next thing. It's almost ingrained at this point. But it's one of the things that I kind of realized, I guess now, is that how much this is very much like a lot of martial arts films from all the way back into the 70s and stuff, really. And this is put out by Golden Harvest. So Golden Harvest is a distribution company in China who does tons of stuff. So they've done everything from Jackie Chan movies. I think they did some Bruce Lee stuff as well. But you name it, they've probably had a finger on it at some point. And this follows so much of that same sort of structure of these great martial arts films from the 70s and 80s that but it does it in a very serious way, and because it's with these weird turtles and stuff like that, it feels new. It feels kind of like a new organic thing, and they take it seriously. And that's what I think one of the director, he kind of almost got fired from what they're saying towards the end of the movie, because when he turned this thing in, it's pretty dark. This is a kids program. It's rated PG, but like it's that close to the line, almost PG-13. If they would have dropped a couple of more bits of language in there, perhaps it would have maybe crested that level. But it was just dark enough. It was just raw enough, and it felt super neat. And the fact that you saw like Casey Jones in there as well. Sure, he didn't keep the mask on all the time, and that was disappointing. But Elias Koteas is fantastic in that role.
And now you're talking about the thing that surprised me the most, because when I first saw this movie, I was not a big Casey Jones fan, and I definitely didn't like Casey Jones in the movie. But now as an adult watching it and seeing just how good he is in this movie, in this dumb movie, and he's so good in it, in the role, it is very impressive. There's a reason why he works all the time, and he's been working all the time for 30 years. It's because he is a terrific actor. And seeing him act against a dude in a rubber suit and playing it as well as he is just so fun to watch. And anything he's in, he elevates the movie a bit.
Easily our best Casey Jones, including easily. Animated incarnations.
Yes.
But, and I don't know if it's because of the hockey gear or what, but the two live action Casey Jones that we've had are both Canadian.
Interesting.
Did not know that.
I like the Jose Canseco slash
yes
in the store. Tell me you didn't pay full price for this. It was a two for one. It's so good. That was another thing that, like, I don't know, maybe it's just I had seen it so many times as a kid, and there are words that you don't quite understand or process all the time, and now as an adult you're like, oh, that's what he's saying. There were a couple of those in this one.
Now, I also want to say I'm always impressed with the actual stunt work, fighting work, acrobatics that are done in the suit, practical effects. Like, there's no CGing out wire foo or anything when this movie's made.
No, people are jumping on trampolines and stuff.
Yeah, you see some of those long shots, though, of backflips and stuff in a turtle suit, and then, you read the behind-the-scenes stuff later about these awesome acrobatic performers they had in there. Just for that alone, I think this movie deserves some appreciation.
Yeah, and, Kevin Clash is doing Splinter, and there's a lot of people who are doing very good work for something that they're not making a whole lot of money on, and they have I guess they probably have an idea that this thing is going to be big, which brings me to a question, which is, why is this an independent movie? Why is this not like a tent pole? Why didn't anyone see that this was going to be a gigantic success? I don't understand that.
I can only speculate. Do you want to say anything, Adam? Because I don't have any inside info, and I don't want it to be presented as that. Do you know anything, Adam, before I speculate?
Well, I mean, I do know that they had been trying to make this movie even before the actual cartoon and everything came out, to where, like, they were going to practically put guys in like a little bandana over their eyes and wear a shell. And when I say people, I mean people like Sam Kinison as one of the Ninja Turtles.
Oh, no.
Boy.
Yeah, there's some of the really, and I forget some of the other names that were involved with that, but when you hear it, you're like, oh, please, heavens no, that is the worst idea ever. And I think really the toughest part is the sell of these turtles, and will this stuff work? And I'm sure we'll get to it a little bit more because I'll hand over to Bruce, but I think had they seen what Jim Henson's company could do with these outfits, with the faces and everything, I think that there would have been more money involved, perhaps. I don't know. That's a guess.
So, what I think had probably happened here, first off, the cartoon was in syndication. So the cartoon wasn't really owned by an entity that had a movie studio arm at the time. And then also the idea of licensing it out, then you start to get issues with the individual licensees of the syndication. And then you get into those issues once you license it to a movie studio, like you were talking about, Adam, you lose a lot of control. And then there's also this part where you have a meeting and they say, okay, here's what we'll do. We'll make this movie on a $10 million budget. And you're like, what? I can come up with $10 million. That's all it costs to make a movie. And then you go and make the movie you want for $12 million. And magically you turn a 10 times profit on it instead of the studio.
Well, that's the big thing. If you can end up doing this sort of stuff yourself, trust me, the boys and girls who put their dollars behind this one ended up a lot better than they would have had they, been funded by an actual studio.
And most comic book writers don't have the bank account of a syndicated successful cartoon show to help them. So most writers don't have the ability to have creative control over a project, but fortunately for these guys, they did. And they managed to keep the comic indie for a very, very long time. So they had some control. And, I think that's part of the issue why they didn't have rights to anything that was on the syndicated cartoon show. And maybe movie studios were going to include in their budget whatever it took to purchase the cartoon rights. And they thought they could do it cheaper, better, and follow their vision and find financial success. And it looks like they did.
Just a little bit. They did all right.
That's all speculation. It's not like that's anything I was told. I want to make that clear.
The Ninja Turtle police are going to come down and bust Bruce for all of his false.
I just spent 10 minutes talking about how I spent time with Kevin Eastman and talked about all kinds of stuff. We never talked about this.
That's true. You didn't get into his financial particulars?
That's not what I do.
Not gauche. All right, that's fair. But I like this movie a whole bunch. To me, when you went to the Foot Clan lair there and everything, it is just like that, Pinocchio's island of whatever.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
Because all of these kids, like you see a kid smoking a cigar. Could you imagine a movie where a kid gets away with smoking a cigar in a PG film today? It doesn't happen.
I think it's awesome.
Me too. And just the great Sam Rockwell showing up, like a 15-year-old Sam Rockwell.
Couldn't believe it, man.
And he is so good. He's so good in this tiny little role. He doesn't have a lot to do. But one of the things that always stuck out to me in this movie is like he's giving these kids the dime tour of the entire place. And the kid goes, "You got any cigarettes?" And he goes, "You got regular or menthol?" And I'm like, what? They're giving, and a carton, no less.
What kid's asking for a carton of menthols? I don't know. Then again, I'm not really a smoker, so I don't know.
But you give the kid a carton. It's just like, well, boy, you're here. You might as well pony on up.
I know my mom smoked menthols, so I thought that's like what old ladies smoked. So that was always weird to me when he offered menthols.
You kids like Cools?
Now, I don't know, Adam. I don't know if this is the same for me or Sean, because we probably had a period in our life where we didn't think much about this movie, then came back to it and you realize, wow, that's Sam Rockwell. And it has like this big impact. But with you, with this always kind of being there, when Sam Rockwell's star began to rise, were you like, oh man, the guy from the Turtles is finally getting famous? Or were you like, oh my goodness, I never realized this great actor was in Turtles?
Oh, it's much later. As much as I love this movie. And I mean, Sam Rockwell, I mean, you put me if I'm wrong here, but it's almost another 10 years before he starts to, get any kind of, status where we would really know his name, right?
I know I didn't really know who he was until about 2002, 2003. So, yeah, that's a little more than 10 years for me.
I'm trying to think of what the first big thing is that I saw him in where it was just like, whoa, here's that guy. I'll think about it. But
like, I don't know what his breakthrough role was, but I first started to really notice him when he made that movie where he was the dating game host who was also an assassin.
Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. Yeah.
Yeah, that movie was so weird. I couldn't help but love it, and he gives a great performance.
Directed by George Clooney.
Yeah, that was his first directing effort, if memory serves.
And man, not to change the subject just real quickly, do either of you guys believe for a second that Chuck Barris was an assassin?
No.
Good. Adam does, of course. I should have known better than
There's
that.
listen, I like to entertain the idea that there's about a 10% chance.
10%.
10%.
And Bob Barker was his handler.
Oh, I think I know the answer. The breakout role for Sam Rockwell for me is in 1999 with The Green Mile.
Yeah, he has a big 1999 for me because he's in both Green Mile and he's in Galaxy Quest.
Yeah, those are probably the two things that really kind of launched. Like, he had a heck of a year that year.
Yeah.
And, in retrospect, I can probably appreciate that. The way my mind functioned in 99, I could only have like one breakout star per movie. And for me, it was the big guy.
Oh, man, he was so good, too. Oh,
I
Michael
love that
Clark
guy.
Duncan. Rest in peace, that guy.
I always get his names in the wrong order, so I just call him the big guy.
I love the flashbacks. I love how we're told the turtle story in two different flashbacks. I love the way that we tell it with lighting and everything in the background just goes black and you have these silhouettes of these people talking and the little puppetry of the rat doing kung fu and stuff. It is so cool. I just and they shot that in 8mm. 8mm film to do those little back things because they wanted it to look raw and gritty.
It absolutely looks it.
Yeah,
oh,
they did a good job.
There's so much noise. There's just so much film noise and grain in there that you're like, boy, this definitely is old. But I love that. I think the fighting stuff was great. I think this is the best Shredder that we've ever had. I love this guy. The outfit itself, that was one of the things as a kid where there's no way that they're going to make this Shredder outfit, work. It doesn't, there's too much spikes. It's too crazy. And they do it, and it's amazing.
It's beautiful, man.
It's so good. He's got these things. I love all the kids in the Bigfoot clan and everything, how they all are hanging out and trying to get up to this level of ninja and stuff to where they can put some pantyhose on their face and go fight people. I love that that's a goal for all of these kids.
For me, it's all about the turtles themselves. When the terrible Michael Bay movies came out a couple of years ago and I hated them. The reason why I hated them the most is that the character design of those turtles is ugly and they're awful and it's an eyesore to look at. Whereas when you look at what's happening in 1990 and the Jim Henson designed turtles, these turtles are so cute. They're just so cute to look at and they're doing dumb stuff I found myself rolling my eyes a lot watching this because I hadn't seen this movie in 30 years, and so. The tequila dance, all that. I find that cloying and annoying, but they're still just so dang cute when you're watching them. I give it a pass and all that stuff. And so when you look at the design of those characters versus the Michael Bay characters, why would you ever want that on a shirt?
Yeah, it's weird.
I'll still say out of all the incarnations, in my opinion, the best one for a shirt is the original animated incarnation.
Yes.
Which is a little different than this movie, but this movie's pretty close to it.
Yes.
Different than the original comics incarnation. But that original, and when I say original, I'm talking about the 5-episode miniseries that launched them.
Right.
That original incarnation, I'm the ultimate, what a friend of mine, a guy I know who also has a pretty well listened to podcast, guy named Ryan Higgins. He talks about lampshade fans where they come in and they say, for example, I love Batman, but the truth is they love lampshades with Batman on them or socks, but they've never actually read a Batman comic. Well, I'm a lampshade fan for that original animated incarnation. I can sit and watch somebody talk about them while they're showing clips in the background. I love the visuals, but I don't actually want to sit down and watch that cartoon.
That's interesting, man. I always called that the iconography.
That's probably a better term, but
lampshade is way better. That's a way better term.
I would love to have a Ninja Turtles lampshade with that original cartoon incarnation of the characters, but I don't really want to sit and watch that cartoon.
Well,
that's way better.
And the best thing is when you say that to somebody and they go, lampshade, what are you talking about? And then you explain it, they're like, that is the perfect term. That's it. Yeah, they know exactly what you mean by that.
And a couple years after learned that term, I met a couple that actually they have a business called Superhero Lampshades, totally unaware of that term. And I just, now they're my,
Wow.
like, I will always stay in touch with the Superhero Lampshades people, even though they've quit making lampshades.
Wow.
How does one get into the lampshade business? Just goes like, there's too many naked light bulbs out there. We got to get to work.
You're just trying to find your niche product to hawk at the local con. Everybody's got something.
Or maybe they're party animals.
Sure. But you're like, man, somehow I managed to come up with 15 yards of superhero pattern material on clearance. What can I make out of these? How about lampshades, night lights?
We took all of our lampshade money and put it into cocaine. So what are you going to do? These things happen. Before we get into some stuff, I do want to say, the thing that still disturbs me the most about this is how Casey Jones straight up murders Shredder. Just a murder.
Yeah, with a joke.
Well, also, it wasn't Casey. Well, I don't know. Do we want to spoiler issue 1 of the comics? But they straight up murder Shredder. I mean, the original comic story is Splinter is manipulating the Turtles to get revenge against Shredder. That's the whole point. I mean, it's very Frank Miller. The art looks very Frank Miller. The plot's very Frank Miller. So that's why it was cool that he straight up dies in the first movie. That's part of mirroring that comic book more than the cartoon. That
said, though, I do enjoy Secret of the Ooze when we go giant super shredder on everything. Boy, does that I don't know, that to me that just kind of paid off because it was just so insane.
Who was in the suit as Super Shredder? Do you remember? And I know we're not talking about that movie, so I don't mean to put anybody on the spot.
It was Carl Reiner, I think.
Oh, okay. I thought it was
Carl
Rob Reiner. I thought it was Rob Reiner. That explains everything.
So I have a confession to make.
Yes.
By the time The Secret of the Ooze comes out, I have moved on. So I never watched any of the other Turtles movies.
I moved on when the third one came out, but I did see the second one in the theater.
I have only ever seen the first one. And watching trailers for the second one made me go, oh, I do not want to watch that. And so I have never seen it.
Well, let's talk.
I look forward to when we get to see it then, because I think we'll have some great conversation there.
I think we will, because this movie itself was, from what everyone that kind of worked on it in one way or the other, was like, oh, this is wildly violent. We can't have this. And like, there were a lot of people that were upset. Jim Henson himself was like, boy, if we knew it was going to be all this violent and all this kind of stuff going on, we probably wouldn't have done it.
Not that violent, though. When you look back at it, not that violent.
But for 1989, for something that was mostly, that movie was for like a 6 to 12-year-old. That was really the range that they were kind of shooting for. It's a PG movie on purpose. It's a little over the top. Now, an 8-year-old Adam loved the crap out of it, but it's because it was like something that you kind of felt like you weren't supposed to be watching. It was hardcore Turtles. Yeah,
but we were also coming out of the decade where the biggest movies were things like Rambo, even though they weren't necessarily PG, but still compared to the decade we were coming out on for an action movie, this wasn't too bad.
But yeah,
one fatality in the whole thing, right?
Yeah, we do see his head crushed. There's no blood, but it's crushed well enough.
His helmet crushed. That's what the people would make their argument to the MPAA.
That's true. But I love the fact that it is kind of cradled in that reality and everything. It is a little bit more violent because when they get to that second movie, because this movie was so dark and quote unquote violent, that they don't even use their weapons.
And that opens up the nunchuck hypocrisy. This is a philosophy that's bothered me since I was a kid.
A hypocrisy?
No, the nunchuck hypocrisy.
I was trying to give it a good name.
Yeah,
the hypocrisy.
There you go.
I currently live in a city where I don't need any special license to walk around with a handgun concealed on my body. However, simply owning nunchucks in my house could get me a ticket. It's kind of ridiculous. And in movies, you can have all the guys with guns you want, laser guns, regular guns. You can have all kinds of weapons. But as soon as the nunchucks break out, particularly the British got real upset about that. And that's what I call the nunchuck hypocrisy. Like guns, no problem. Nunchucks, well, that's just going to cause the youth to kill each other.
It'll probably, maybe just conk themselves out just enough, really. Because if you've ever seen one of your friends try to do some nunchucks, it is usually ending up with one smack dab in the forehead.
Not one of my friends. I was the friend, believe me. How many pairs of homemade nunchucks did I have as a kid? Like breaking out in cold sweat at night, the police would find out and I go to juvie. Oh, man.
This boy's got chucks on him. Get him.
I had a totally legally purchased butterfly knife, but I was worried about my homemade nunchucks.
Well, cops.
Well, let's get down to one of the most important aspects of this show before we do our rating. We need to find out how this movie relates back 1-to-1 with Sylvester Stallone.
Why, thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement here. David Foreman got zipped up in the Leonardo suit for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which makes sense, seeing as how he's been a stuntman forever. He did stunts for Spies Like Us and Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, and he's still working today on the TV show Pennyworth and Men in Black International. David Foreman is British, and he was on the 1980 tumbling squad for the World Games. From there, he met Rick Baker, who hired him to play an ape in the 1984 movie Greystoke. And from there, David Foreman would go on to build a career that spans almost 40 years. And he's a major go-to guy for the Pierce Brosnan James Bond movies, having worked on 4 of them. But David would move on to Star Wars and Harry Potter movies and Game of Thrones. But in 1986, he's stuntman on the movie Daylight, starring Sylvester Stallone. Daylight is a movie that weirdly a certain segment of society loves. And I say weirdly because when I saw the movie, I thought it was ridiculous. Like when Stallone explains the reason why he drives a cab is because he was fired from his last job for caring too much. That's a pretty regular trope in movies in the 90s, and I think we can all agree that's a good thing that trope has been since retired. But thankfully, David Foreman was hired as a stunt guy on this movie because we have a Stallone connection this week. If you've ever spent any time around stunt people, you may notice how positive and nice they are as a group. They cheer each other on and have a respect for one another, that if you're in the wrong mood when spending time with them, it makes it feel like they might be in a cult. Every funny line said is the funniest thing that's ever been said. Every idea brilliant. Every compliment wonderful. But when you're in the right mood, you're hanging out with a guy who looks remarkably like Henry Cavill or Scarlett Johansson. But this can bring a much bigger problem, and a problem I lovingly refer to as the stunt girl problem. Now, this is what I call it because this is my experience, but it can also be called the stunt boy problem or the non-binary human problem. You decide. You decide. There are many reasons to socialize and date someone who works on a stunt crew. They're in top physical condition. They're fun. They're employed. They have their own sense of self. But there is a dark side. They behave like actors, and actors are the worst. They need way more attention than a normal person would. There's also a bit of an inferiority complex because it's their body that's on screen, not their face, which requires a constant stream of compliments like, no, I think you're just as attractive as Guy Pearce, or you could be just as famous as Morena Baccarin, but she just got more breaks than you. And this sounds like something you might be able to put up with, but remember, they're in better shape than you. They don't require as much sleep as you. They eat better than you do. They challenge each other to do 50 sit-ups to see who can do it fastest. It's a hell of your own making, and I'm only trying to help you. So what I'm telling you here is that you can date David Foreman if you'd like, but it's probably a better idea that you don't. Just find someone who still loves you even though you're awful. And if you're remarkably lucky, the snakes in their head get along with the snakes in your head. And there you have it, HMPers and Dingalingers. This week's Stallone connection is stuntman David Foreman. Adam and Bruce, this is the 344th episode of this bit, and still no word from Sylvester Stallone.
My goodness. Well, here at Hero Movie Podcast, we have our own Robin rating system. No grades or anything else like that. Check it out over at reddit.com/r/Hero Movie Podcast. It's right up there at the top of the page. And why don't you subscribe to that bad boy while you're at it? We really appreciate it. Bruce, where does Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from 1990 fall on the Robin rating system for you?
Well, before I give it the rating, I just want to mention that there's some people shouting, I can't believe they didn't even mention Cousin Oliver was in this movie. So there you go. Cousin Oliver was in this movie, in case you're like me and you love to mention Cousin Oliver whenever you can.
What was he playing?
I think he was the voice of Michelangelo.
I don't know that that's him. I could be wrong.
I will wager any amount that Cousin Oliver was one of the Turtles' voices.
All right.
Whether it was Michelangelo or not, maybe I don't know that 100%, but I know he was the voice of a turtle, and I think it was Michelangelo. So there you go, Cousin Oliver fans. This movie's always going to be a Tim Drake for me. I went in knowing what it would be ranked before I watched it. And there were no surprises. This is a movie that makes me happy, man. And you don't mess with happy. There's better movies, there's worse movies, but happy is happy. So Tim Drake.
You are correct. Robbie Rist, Michelangelo, and he played Michelangelo through I think all three of the Turtle films, the original live action one. So one of the few people to do that. Your fabled Corey Feldman wouldn't take $1,500 to do the sequel.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference in making an unknown. He should have asked for points. That would have fixed it all.
It might have. It'd just be like, look, just give me one on the back end for this Ninja Turtles. Man, he could have raked in on that bad boy.
My guess is that Robbie Rist had better representation than Corey Feldman and had a much better deal.
You try to tell me
picture deal?
You try to tell me that Cousin Oliver's better than me? I don't buy it for a second.
You got to remember this predates the biggest hits of Corey Feldman's career, I think.
No,
what are you getting, like Lost Boys?
I think Dream a Little Dream, and License to Drive, I thought came out after this, but my mind is so messed up.
Bad News Bears, Lost Boys. I mean, he's in...
Yeah, Lost Boys is a big deal, but I think he made more money from the more direct-to-video type stuff like License to Drive and Dream a Little Dream.
Friday the 13th Part 4.
Oh, yeah. Tommy.
Sean?
Yes, this is a Tim Drake for me as well. I will warn you, if somehow you sidestepped Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles just through your age or through circumstance, and you don't have a particular love for this movie in the first place, you are not going to like this movie. This is a terrible movie. But because of our affinity for the Turtles in the first place, I can't give it any lower than a Tim Drake. I just can't do it.
I do not claim in any way, shape, or form to be able to grade this film realistically. It's part of my childhood. This is a thing that I grew up on. I remember seeing it in the theater, all the Pizza Hut advertisements and crap, and how you wanted to go specifically to Pizza Hut because they had Ninja Turtle crap there. Even in 1990, I went to the Turtles Out of Their Shells tour at Carowinds, for heaven's sake, and it was awful. Even as a child, I knew it was all. I'm like, this is terrible. Can we leave? And we did, and we just went to the rest of the park and did all the other stuff. But we were in it. So I can't look at this movie with a super objective eye as much as I tried to this time. And there are certainly things that you can point at, nits with which that you can pick. But overall, I just have a joy for this movie that I can't really explain. And I think that for what it does and how it works, it holds up well enough. And I really think so much of that comes down to the fact of the direction, but really it's the puppet work for Jim Henson Studios, doing those faces and making you watch this movie and forget that you're watching about guys in big giant foam latex outfits and stuff, and you buy them as characters because they're so darn emotive, and it feels like they're treating it real. They're treating it like it's a real thing and not some stupid children's flick, and it works for that reason. So for me, it's a Dick Grayson all day long. I can't help it. And we can't help but doing another one of these here shows next week because, boys and girls, there's some new stuff on the horizon. Oh, my gosh, new things. Who knew? Who knew there could still be new stuff on the horizon? But next week, we're going to be covering, what's the actual name? It's Superman and Lois?
Superman and Lois.
Does it have a subtitle with that as well? The Wacky New Adventures of Such and Balls?
Superman and Lois, the 2-hour premiere.
So we'll be checking that out and see if that's worth taking a gander at next week. And, of course, as we said previously, we do want to thank everybody that supports the show over at the Dinger Zone and for voting on this movie that we watched this month. You guys will be able to vote again later on at the end of this month for yet another movie. Can't beat that. Oh, and by the way, I want to start something new because once this episode goes out, this is the new month and everything. Next week, we'll be saying off all of the big executive producers and all that kind of good stuff. And I want to start something a little bit new. I don't know how this is going to work. But it works. It works for another show, so it might not work for us. Steal from the best, I always say. If you want to join in on Patreon, and you have a friend that listens to this show, and I know that you do. I know you got a friend that listens to this show, and they're not a supporter over at Patreon, and you are, you can call them out as a slacker. That's what I want to do, and we're going to do it by doing this.
You're a slacker.
Just have that in there. So call your friends out as a slacker, and then if that person comes and actually donates on the Patreon page, we reverse that slacker, and you're back into the good graces of the HMP. That's what I say. And you get yourself a nickname, extra stuff. You can't beat it. So patreon.com/HMP. Bruce, until next week, where can we find more of your work on the internet?
Oh man, I'm still going really, really steady on YouTube. And Sean, I don't know, have you ever had nights where you can't fall asleep because your mind is just so busy debating like which wizard is better, Merlin or Gandalf? Does this happen to you like it does to most people?
Yes, all the time, because I love wizards and magic. It's my favorite thing to talk about.
Well, I've got great news. What? I can settle all those debates for you. My latest video is a definitive list of the top 10 wizards in order. So go ahead, go over to youtube.com/C/Bruce Leslie. Check out that latest YouTube video about the top 10 wizards, and stick around till later in the week when I'm going to be dropping a special Jack Kirby Fourth World episode. So yeah, YouTube guys, check it out. I'm really enjoying the support you guys are giving me so far. It's a slow build, but I want to keep growing.
Versus, at least please tell me there's at least a hidden advertisement for one of your books in that.
No comment. Don't want to spoil anything.
I asked that question specifically because I've seen the video.
And for those of you who have always wondered what Bruce looks like in a wizard's outfit, your prayers have been answered. So
so far it's something different every week. So there's another surprise for the one coming out at the end of this week, but I don't want to spoil it.
That's all I'll say. Sean?
Yeah, you can find us at one of our myriad of other podcasts. We've got all of the 30 Questions podcasts. Just go into your podcatcher, type in 30 Questions. Bam, there's most of our stuff. What we're working on currently is WandaVision 30 Questions. And we have a lot to talk about WandaVision, so check that out.
So much WandaVision talk, and the best part is we're going to continue on after that with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So I always almost want to say Falcon and the Snowman because of the thing, but we'll be covering that stuff as well. So do subscribe to all of those fun things. That is it, everybody. Join us next week when we're talking about the premiere of Superman and Lois. For Sweet Sean Zakovac from the internet, Bruce Leslie, I'm Adam Portress. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Evie, the Falcon and the Snowman and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Yay, Frosty.
Over half shell, then the heroes for. In this day and age, who could ask for more? The crime wave is high, with muggings mysterious. All police and detectives are furious, cause they can't find the source of this lethally evil force. This is serious, so give me a quarter. I was a witness, get me a reporter. Call April O'Neil in on this case, and you better hurry up, there's no time to waste. We need help like quick on the double. Have pity on the city, man, it's in trouble. We need heroes like the Lone Ranger when Tonto came pronto, when there was danger. They didn't say we'd be there in half an hour, cause they displayed triple power. Reporter was hot on the trail, determined to put these crooks in jail. She spied the bad guys and saw what happened, but before she knew it, she fell in a trap and got caught. Yeah, she was all alone, with no friends and no phone. Now this was beyond her worst dreams, cause she was cornered by some wayward teens. Headed by Shredder, they were anything but good. Misguided on love, they called them the foot. They could terrorize and be angry youth, and they'd mug the people who needed proof. Then from out of the dark came an awesome sight, shouting cowabunga as they hit the ground. From the field of weeds, the heroes rescued the flower, cause they possessed turtle power. What you believe in, and find the strength to do what's right, that's turtle power. on a half shell. They're on a mission. When there's a battle, got the enemy wishing that they stayed at home. Instead of fighting these ninja masters with moves like lightning, they were once normal, but now they're mutants. Splinter's the teacher, so they are the students. Leonardo, Michelangelo, and Donatello make up the team with one other fellow, Raphael. He's the leader of the group, transformed from the norm by the nuclear group. Pizza's the food that's sure to please. These ninjas are into pepperoni and cheese. Back to the story, it's not hard to find. Ninjas not just of the body, but of the mind. Those were the words that the master instructed, but a letter from Shredder had Splinter abducted. That was the last straw, spring into action. Step on the foot, now they're gonna lose traction. Now this is for real, so you fight for justice. Your shell is hard, so you shout, they can't dust us off like some old coffee table. Since you've been born, you've been willing and able to defeat the sneak, protect the weak, fight for rights and your freedom to speak. Now the villain is chilling, so you make a stand. Back to the wall, put your sword in your hand. Remember the words of your teacher, your master. Evil moves fast, but good moves faster than light. Shining for your illumination. Good versus evil equals confrontation. So when you're in trouble, don't give in and go sour. Try to rely on your triple power.